The image of Raila being heckled in Gusiland, people walking out on him. The image of President Ruto moving around Nairobi with goons scattered over the place, and the images appearing on social media, making fun of every move the president makes in Nairobi, of the floating chapatis. This is where the country is today. That for the first time, I think in many years, Raila is being told face to face that Kenyans are unhappy with him. The President of the Republic of Kenya is by now aware that the people of this country are not happy. The Nairobi tour, or should I call them tours, the Nairobi tour has shown that the people of this country, the people of this city, are not with the president. I want to use this as a springboard to talk about Raila Odinga. And answer the question as to whether Raila Amolo Odinga will stick with President William Samoei Ruto to the end. The answer is yes and no. Let me start with no. If what Raila received in Gusiland is anything to go by, then we can expect a lot more pressure on Raila Odinga, a lot more hostility from the public, a lot more pressure from those who love him, from those who have supported him over the years. The reaction from the people in many of the functions Raila is going to be attending in the future, the ridicule he will get, the heckling, the rejection, the caricaturing in social media Raila will get. But finally, when the people of Kenya walk out on Raila Odinga, then he will realize his stay with Ruto is no longer tenable. That moment will come when it will be so clear to Raila Odinga that he is walking alone, that the people of Kenya who have supported him over the years have rejected and have nothing, and will have nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with his dealings with William Samoei Ruto. So yes, Raila may not continue being with Ruto. That will be the moment Raila will depart and leave Ruto alone. That is the moment Raila will break away from whatever argument he will have had with Ruto. In other words, I can foresee a situation when the people will be so hostile against Raila Odinga that the only way for him, the only option available to Raila Odinga will be to part ways with Ruto. Raila loves his people and the people love him. To get to a point where crowds walk out on Raila in functions, where people shout at Raila and heckle him, I don't think Raila can take that. I know a bit of that man. And my knowledge tells me, when the people get to a point where they will not listen to Raila Odinga anywhere, when the noise and the rejection on social media and even mainstream media will reach a certain level, Raila will quit. So yes, it is possible Raila will part ways with Ruto. But there are also circumstances under where Raila will stick with Ruto. What are those circumstances? In the year 1997 or thereabouts, Raila joined KANU, rising to become Secretary General of the party, in circumstances that really annoyed people like J.J. Kamodo and Saitoti. The famous "there come a time when the nation is greater than a man." May the soul of George Saitoti, my friend, rest in peace. Raila then occupied that major space. His contribution to the politics of this country, they say when KANU swallowed the Tinga, they forgot to switch off the engine. Hence, Raila's contribution to the removal of KANU from power. That's one way of looking at it. He has had other dalliances with other presidents, Kibaki. And people argue, by cooperating with Kibaki, Kenya achieved a lot of development in that period of the cooperation government, the Nusumkate government. He then moved into the handshake with Uhuru Kenyatta. And there are those who argue it was a good move because the country was being split into two. Remember the NRM, the National Resistance Movement of David Ndei and Miguna Miguna, or people saying they are removing Uhuru Kenyatta's portraits in public places in some parts of this country. Talk of secession. Sometimes I could see Raila's thinking. Countries have been torn apart, starting just like a joke. So those who think that was a joke should reconsider and read a bit of history and see how civil wars have been started and waged in different countries. It's not always about big things. It may start so petty and so small, but before you know what's going on, millions of people have been killed or died in a country in civil war. So it is possible that Raila, working with Ruto, saved this country from calamity. Today, contrary to the expectation and wish of many people, Raila Odinga is working with Ruto. Even Ruto himself had said, never, never. You lose, you go home. Let the winner run the country. But the realities of the day forced him to look for Raila Odinga. So under what circumstances then may this arrangement between Ruto and Raila work? I offer my advice to Raila Odinga. You've been invited into a house by William Samoei Ruto. There are many rooms in this house. President Ruto has given you a number of rooms in the house. But the house is stinking. There is stench all over. The one house he has given you, there's a skunk inside. One room. The skunk in the room Ruto has given you, Raila Odinga, that is causing the stench from that room, is about the security of the Kenyan people. That government somehow is unable to control harm reaching Kenyans, especially young people, through abductions and extrajudicial killings. I'm not saying the government is doing it, but what I'm saying categorically is that it has been happening, and government has been unable to control it. We are a little happy now that sort of there's some silence and peace and quiet, and the abductions are not quite there. So build on that, Raila Odinga. Ask the president to clean the room in which you live, the room he has allocated you in his house. Remove the skunk. Let Kenyans not ever again be treated to abductions and extrajudicial killings and disappearance. That way, your continued stay in the coalition or arrangement between you and Ruto will be acceptable to the people of Kenya. He has allocated you another room in which you have packed your loyalists who have become ministers of PO and I, Mbadi, Ali Hassan Joho, Wycliffe Ambeza Oparanya, the lady from Turkana, and so on and so forth. All the dirt that has been swept from the sitting room has been hidden in that room. Especially the room and the chair John Mbadi sits on. That couch, that seat, under the seat, all the dirt is there, and the room is stinking. Ask the president to bring cleaners to clean that room, especially from beneath, from under the seat of John Mbadi. Remove the burden of taxation from the people of this country. Raila Odinga, if you are able to convince the president, please let the people go. The people are suffering excess taxation. Raila Odinga, if you are able to convince the president to do something about the unbearable housing levy, then you can continue cooperating with Ruto. And the people of this country may as well support you. That room is stinking. If you can lower some of the taxes, whose incidence hurts big to the common people. In that room where Mbadi sits, that stinking room, the cost of living should be something to be considered as you sweep that room clean, as you clean it. Raila Odinga. If Raila Odinga is able to convince President William Ruto to lower electricity tariffs, to look at the taxes and levies on fuel, I know people are saying fuel is now stabilized, but for how long? Is a factor of the dollar. Is the dollar stable today because of physical discipline, because of monetary policies, because of discipline within government? Or is it stable because the demand on the dollar is not there? The dollar is used to import luxury. Could it be that the shilling is stable against the dollar because Kenyans don't have the money to engage in luxury, and therefore they are not going for the dollar to import good things for the luxury? Is the price of fuel stable where it is today because of international stability? These are not empty questions. In that room, as we clean, we must look at the taxes imposed on fuel by the Republic or by the government of Kenya, and they reduce them to make the cost of doing business in this country manageable, bearable, so that businessmen do not leave this country. They manufacture here and create jobs. Raila Odinga can stay with Ruto if he convinces William Samoei Ruto to lower levies and taxes on fuel to make life bearable to the people of this country, and to make business, especially manufacturing, possible, which then can create jobs. Another room that has been offered to Raila Odinga within the big house of President Ruto is also dirty. Let Raila Odinga point out this dirt and the stench coming from the room to the president and tell the president that room, hiyo room inanuka, tufagie. As you clean that room, the burden imposed on the people of Kenya through the SHA that is not working will be swept so that the room will smell well, smell nice for occupancy by Raila's people. When sense has been brought in the health sector, when SHA Huduma Taifa, whatever is called, is not imposed on the people of Kenya, when it's not hurting people's payslips without delivering for the people of this country. That, Raila, if you did, your continued stay with Ruto will be viable, and the people of Kenya will support you. The other corners of the house that are smelling, and yet they have been allocated to you. Take education, for example. This CBC thing is not working. The current debate in the country is about mathematics no longer being compulsory. I've been to places, I have seen what happens sometimes when education, when some subjects are not compulsory. And I'm saying, I'm not an authority, I'm just saying there's debate among other issues on CBC. That is part of cleaning the house. That's part of cleaning the corner you occupy, Raila Odinga. If Raila Odinga will advise and achieve on matters of education, for example, if university students will attend university without the demon of this new funding model, and I speak as a person who knows what is happening in universities, that for the first time in the history of this country, for the first time in the history of our universities, there are positions, many of the positions, chances are not being taken up. I know. That's where I work. Traditionally, less than 0.01% of places were not taken by students. Almost none. You admit 2,000, you receive 2,000. Maybe only 2 or 3, maximum of 10 out of the 2,000 have not reported. Maybe they are sick, maybe they have gone abroad, maybe they are dead. But all Kenyan students would always take up university places. And that is why, those who are doubting me, that's why throughout the history of university admission in this country, there has never been a replacement. Never. We have never had replacements. You either take up your position or it stays. There has never been never replacements. But today, courtesy of this bad policy on funding, students are not taking up places. And those who are taking, they are living miserable lives. Parents are selling their only parcels of land. So one of the ways in which Raila can stay with Ruto is to convince Ruto to do something about university education, about university funding. All universities today are broke. Pensions are at risk. I talk as a senior citizen. Management of universities is terrible. So if Raila can convince Ruto, while working with him, to knock sense into the education sector, have our students begin enjoying the serious business of learning in our universities without concentrating on chasing sukuma wiki to cook, then he can continue staying with Ruto. You can go on and on, that there are many bad things that are happening in this country, that there's a lot of anger in this country against government. If Raila can help the president address those things for which Kenyans are angry and annoyed and mad, I see that as one way of Raila continuing to work with Ruto. But to say you'll be with Ruto, Raila Odinga, with all the mess around, it does not matter how much rounds you make in the country. It will not work. If you want to know that is true, look at the president's recent trip in Nairobi, those rounds in Nairobi. They have achieved nothing. Instead, they expose the president to ridicule. Which is not good for any country. And therefore, Raila Odinga, if you want to continue working with the president, many Kenyans will support you. If you knock down the evil one after the other, so that in a year's time, if this house to which you have been invited does not stink then you can march to 2027 with Ruto. And many people will support you. Whether you win or not is another story. But the hostility that is beginning to emerge against you, I'm sure will begin to disappear even before it starts well. If they see results, if they see you driving the president, helping the president drive in the right direction, easing the pain, Kenyans, wish you the best.